Hey, and welcome back to Common Knowledge, the show where I take a look at 10 common Magic the Gathering cards and tell you are they any good in the Pauper format or not. No, I am not the newest member of Guns N' Roses, but my hair looks like shit, so the bandana goes on. Why don't we just move into cards, shall we? Well, let's hang out with that. Let's talk about Vengeful Creeper, which is 4 and a green for a 5/5 plant elemental. It's got Disguise for 5 and a green. I don't think we've talked about Disguise on the channel before. You may cast this card face down for 3 mana as a 2/2 creature with Ward 2. Turn it face up anytime for its Disguise cost. Maybe we have. Maybe we have. Or maybe we did Cloak, which Cloak does a very similar thing. It's like Morph. It's basically like Morph. But when this creature is turn faced up, destroy target artifact or enchantment an opponent controls. So you get kind of a naturalize effect on this 5/5 guy. Here's the problem, though. You're already putting down this guy for 3 mana to put him face down as a 2/2. And yeah, he's got Ward 2, but that's kind of a nothing creature. A little bit. 3/3 for or 3 mana for a 2/2. It's not amazing. And I found that you have to have at least two different kinds of morphy disguisey creatures to not just tell your opponent, hey, it's that. Like, hey, this is the exact card that I have. You see that a lot in Commander games when people play Foretell cards, because there's only so many Foretell cards that are even really usable in Commander. And once you see people's color combinations and you have a general idea of what their deck does, you're like, oh, it's like one of 2 cards. And it's really easy to start figuring that out. And it makes the idea of Foretell, or in this case, Disguise, it makes that effect weaker because I know that it's only going to be a couple of different things. So it's not very disguised. It's not hidden information to me. Now, maybe you can get away with Disguise in this one because I don't think anyone's expecting you to play this card because it's not very good. You're paying 3 mana to get a 2/2 on the board. He's got Ward 2, whatever. You then have to pay 6 more mana. So now you're putting 9 total mana into this card to flip it over at some point. Now, the flip over is not only instant speed, but it's like a weird free action kind of thing that you can do at any time and messes with timing rules in a way that's kind of cool. It's kind of cool that you can do that, but it doesn't come up mechanically all that. It's not all that relevant mechanically is what I'm trying to say. More importantly, you're putting 9 mana in this to put down a 2/2 creature that will eventually flip up into a 5/5 creature that naturalizes something. Big whoop. Or you're paying 5 mana for a vanilla 5/5. That's not very good either. I think this is a bad card. I think it's just generally a bad card. I think this probably would have been a bad limited card. I didn't play MKM limited, but I can't imagine this being very good there either. The only things that excite me about this card is that it's a plant elemental. Like plants are good. Maybe not in Pauper exactly, but I'm thinking about like Avenger of Zendikar in Commander and things like that put more 1/1 counters on plants. I'm thinking about Roots. What's the Roots card? Oh my god, why did I forget? Roots, Insidious Roots. There you go. Insidious Roots puts +1/+1 counter on each plant you control, not just the tokens. So this guy's a plant, he would get the counters as well. But those are not relevant to Pauper, so I wouldn't worry about it. So yeah, just what do you give a vanilla 5/5 that has an ability you'll probably never play? If I want to be as generous as possible, I will say this is a modal spell. In that you can either pay 3 mana earlier in the game to get a 2/2 on the board, or you can pay 5 mana later in the game to get a 5/5 on the board. I guess it's nice to be able to have a card that can fulfill multiple roles in that way. But in both ways, those are pretty vanilla creatures. And I don't think they help you out all that much. Yeah, I don't like this card at all. I'm going to give it a... Am I going to give it a 1? Yeah, I think I'm going to give it a 1.4. Really unhappy with this one. Let's move on to the next. Can't be worse, right? Launch is 1 and a blue for an enchantment aura that enchants a creature. Enchanted creature has flying, and when this aura is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you return it to its owner's hand. So this is another. Well, it's not a cycle, right? Because Rancor is from Urza's Destiny, not Urza's Saga. Yeah, this is from Urza's Destiny. Or Legacy, sorry. Urza's Legacy for that. So I don't know. I don't know if this is actually part of a cycle or not, but the idea that, hey, these auras, when they go to the graveyard, you put them back into your hand, those are nice. That's a nice way of getting a little bit more advantage out of auras. We've talked about on the channel many times before. Part of the problems with auras is it's so easy to get 2-for-1. And it still is pretty easy to get 2-for-1, even when you play this, because if you try to cast this on a creature, or you try to cast this to attach to a creature, if your opponent kills the creature, this just goes to the graveyard. Does not go back to your hand, because it has to go back from the battlefield. And if it doesn't have anything attached to, it didn't hit the battlefield in that way. It has invalid targets. So there is still ways of losing this card, but this is, in some ways, a very repeatable way of giving flying to a creature. Is just giving flying to a creature enough for 2 mana? Probably not. Probably not. There's better, cheaper ways of giving flying to your creatures. But maybe if you have like some way of sacrificing creatures and having enchantments hit the board so you're able to sack stuff, put this back in your hand, play it again. Maybe, but probably not. I think you need a power or power toughness, or at least a power boost, along with the flying to make this worthy of play. But I just don't think this clears the bar at all, even with its potentially unique ways of being played. So let's go with a something like a 2.6 maybe, and even that's probably a little too high, but let's go with that. Messenger Jays is 4 and a blue for a 2/1 flying bird. It also has Council's Dilemma. When this creature enters, starting with you, each player votes for feather or quill. Put a +1/+1 counter on this creature for each feather vote, and draw a card for each quill vote. For each card drawn this way, discard a card. Okay. So this was originally from Conspiracy, which is a multiplayer format where you'd play, having 4 people. And I think, is Conspiracy the one where you play with a partner, like a 2-headed giant variant? Or is that just Battle Bond that I'm thinking of? Either way, the idea, like, these Council's Dilemma cards are much better when you're playing with 4 people. When you're just playing one-on-one, they are much less good. So, you get Council's Dilemma. Imagine playing that with 4 people. You get 4 votes here. So you either get more 1/1 counters, or you get more loot effects, drawing and discarding. In a 2-player game, your opponent is going to pick the one that's worse for you in the moment, and then you get to pick the one that's better for you in the moment, but you only get 2 choices, so you only get 2 bites at this. So you spent 5 mana for this 2/1 flyer that, in some ways could get up to a 4/3. I think a 5 mana 4/3 flyer is not a very good card either. Or this potentially is a 2/1 flyer that draws you 2 cards that you then also have to discard 2 cards from your hand. So yes, you get some card filtering out of it, but that's not particularly great either. That's a bad card. A bad card for this format. Again, if you got to do this 4 times and you got a lot of card filtering or a lot of +1/+1 counters, like, imagine paying 5 mana for a 6/5 flyer. Now we're talking. That's a lot better. But you're not getting that in the Pauper format. So this just loses a ton of its value and becomes a very pedestrian kind of card. And I think we can give it a very pedestrian kind of score. And let's give it a 2.2, I believe. Molten Rebuke is 4 and a red. A lot of expensive cards today. It's a sorcery. You can choose one or both. Molten Rebuke deals 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker or destroy target equipment. Those are very specific things. Especially the equipment one. There's some equipment in Pauper, but I would not say it is very, pardon the pun, common to see equipment. There's a handful of decks that use them, but for the most part, I think equipment's just seen to be a little too slow in the format for most decks. So the equipment part, you're probably not going to get very much play out of. So this is really just a 5 mana deal 5 damage to a creature, because we also don't have planeswalkers in the format either. So, that's we had Lava Axe a couple episodes ago, and that's 5 mana to deal 5 damage to the face. That card's also not very good, but I like it more. This just dealing 5 damage to a creature for that same cost. Yeah, this is one of those cases where it's just a little too narrow to be good. It was probably fine in limited because All Will Be One had a lot more equipment in it, and certainly creatures and planeswalkers that were available to hit as well. But you just have to think of opportunity costs when you're playing in Pauper. Like, what cards could you play instead of this? And there's like 10,000. There's like 10,000 cards you might consider over this one instead. That's not true. There's probably only like 4,000, but still, you should play any of those 4,000 cards instead of this one. Let's give this thing. It is still a removal spell, so you got to give it a little bit of props there. How about we go with something like a 2.8? Malevolent Noble, 1 and a black for a 2/2 human noble. You can pay 2 and sacrifice an artifact or another creature and put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. I do like this effect. I don't really like paying 2 mana for it, though. As a person who has a Marchesa of the Black Rose, Marchesa of the Black Rose commander deck. I like sacrificing stuff and putting 1/1 counters on things so you can get them back with Marchesa. It's sad that this only puts the 1/1 counter on him. If it put the 1/1 counter anywhere you wanted to, I think. Well, I was gonna say I think you could justify it, but the mana cost you can't. There's too many ways, too many sacrifice effects that you can get for either 1 mana or for free. Carrion Feeder kind of does this. You can't do artifacts with Carrion Feeder, but Carrion Feeder just kind of does this better and faster and cheaper all around. It's a fine effect, but if you don't use it, and it is expensive to use, you just have a black grizzly bear here, and that's pretty bad. Pretty bad. I'm going to give it a 2.3, and I think the 0.3 is doing a lot of work because of the effect. But the 2 is just for this being a grizzly bear, because I don't know if I know we've done grizzly bear style cards. I don't think we've actually done grizzly bear on this channel, but grizzly bear would get a 2. Maybe I would joke around and give it a 2.2 for the power and toughness, but grizzly bear is just a 2. So this gets a little extra value because of the ability, but it's pretty bad. Moving on to Ferocious Charge. 2 and a green for an instant. Target creature gets +4/+4 until end of turn, and you scry 2. From Fifth Dawn. Original Mirrodin block. We like that. What we don't like is a slightly better Giant Growth with a Scry 2 attached to it, but having to pay 3 times as much as a Giant Growth. I don't want to pay that. And I wonder if this even showed up in Standard at all, because Giant Growth was in Standard at the time. Giant Growth showed up in 8th edition, so that would have been Standard legal at this time too. So I don't think anyone was playing this card in Standard. Even with the Scry, even with a slight power and toughness boost over Giant Growth. Giant Growth is just so much cheaper, so much more usable than a card like this. And I think you I think you're gonna want that extra 2 mana instead of the scry and the +1/+1 out of that. So, and now especially in Pauper, like imagine all the other cards that are giant growths or slightly better giant growths or side grades to giant growth in some way, and they're all probably better than this card. So I'm gonna give this thing a 2.6. It is still a. I'm going to give it lower than that. I'm going to give it a 2.4. It is still a combat trick, and I think combat tricks are pretty cool, especially in the Pauper format. I think it's really cool when you're able to pull off a fun combat trick, but it's not very good. Viashino Spear Hunter is 2 and a red for a 2/1 Lizard Warrior. No longer Viashinos. They have all become lizards, which, is probably better for ease of play, but I miss Viashinos, especially since this is the only printing of this card, and the only printing still says Viashino on it, so kind of feels bad when somebody tries to play this. If somebody tried to play this in their lizard deck, I think we all know at this point that Viashino is just lizard, so you can do that, but there's some creatures that those aren't as apparent on. And so when somebody goes, "Oh, this changed to a cat," like, you guys didn't know that changed to a cat, and then somebody has to look it up on Scryfall and go, "Oh, no, it's right. It is a cat now." They used to say reading the card explains the card, and that doesn't always happen these days. Anyway, Viashino Spear Hunter, 2 and a red for the Lizard Warrior. It's got first strike. It's 2/1. That's not very good. It's just not. I mean, this is a halfway decent body. 3 mana is not the worst thing in the world, but it's kind of just a Necrotal, but they cut off the best part of Necrotal and made it a little bit cheaper and made it red. Yeah, that's kind of it. It's a pretty simple card. That's why it was in a core set like Magic 2010, and it's why you don't play it in Pauper. So we'll just go ahead and give this thing I'm just going to give this a straight 2 and move on to Hampering Snare, which is 1 and a blue for an instant. Creatures your opponents control get -2, -0 until end of turn, and it also has cycling for 2, which means you can pay the 2, discard this card, and draw a card. That's kind of not bad. You get this semi-fog effect. Not as good as fog, and there's a lot of fogs available in Pauper that you just play over this, but fogs are almost all green. This one's blue, and this is kind of the way that blue does fogs. It just reduces power. So it's not as good, but it's okay. And the cycling's always good. Just an instant speed, ditch this card because it's not a situation where I need it, and draw a card. Maybe that card is better for me. Cycling makes a card better. It kind of does. Cycling can make a card like 0.5 better in some cases. It can make it like a couple whole points better, depending on how cheap the cycling is and what the card effect is. But in this case, I think it's probably a little bit on the lower end. 2 mana for this effect when a lot of those fogs are just a single mana, or can be used multiple times in the case of like Moment of Peace, or Moment's Peace, I think is what it's called. Those just outshine this quite a bit. And outside of something like a Humbling Elder, like you have a Humbling Elder that does a similar kind of effect. It only does it for 1 creature, but Humbling Elder, it comes in, does that to 1 creature, but it's also a single blue mana. It also has flash. It's also a body that gets put on the table. You see Fairies decks play this because it's a card that you can flash in and then ninjutsu out the next turn, and you see its value here on a creature like that when it's on an instant that you'll just kind of lose. it does spread it around to all the creatures. You know, if you're playing against a white weenie deck or something that's going really wide, but also really small, this is just as good as a fog in a lot of ways. Unless somebody's playing Leonardo Big Brother, and then this doesn't really help you all that much. I'm kind of stalling because I don't really know what to give it. I think I'm gonna end up giving this a 3.1. You know what? I think I can do it a little bit better. I'm gonna give it a 3.3. In fact, and you know what? I think the cycling has a lot to do with it. Did I already make the mark for this one? I don't know. Maybe we'll just do an extra bonus card and we'll figure it out. Vital Surge, 1 and a green for an instant. That's also an arcane spell. Very important. You gain 3 life. It also can be spliced onto arcane for 1 and a green. So as you cast an arcane spell, you may reveal this card from your hand and pay its splice cost. If you do, you add this card's effects to that spell. And then you keep the card in your hands. You can play this again. From Betrayers of Kamigawa, which is always cool to me. I really like that Kamigawa block, even if it's filled with not very good cards like this. Still, though, if you're playing something with a lot of arcane spells, and there's not a lot of arcane spells that are at common and also playable in Pauper, especially not in green. You know, if you're playing red, you can get into like Lava Spike. I forgot what it's called. It's not Lava Spike. Maybe it is Lava Spike. It is Lava Spike. That's the card I'm thinking of. Like Lava Spike, that's a sorcery arcane spell. You pay the 1 mana. So let's say you're playing a Gruul deck or something. You have another 2 mana. You can reveal this card from your hand, gain that 3 life, keep this card back in your hand, and then gain another 3 life another time. So it is just some utility. It is some card advantage in that way. It's a way of holding a card into your hand, and that can be nice. But it's not very good. Just gaining 3 life. You know, I guess we do play a lot of sideboard cards that will gain you incidental life in Pauper when you're going up against those mono red madness decks or those even some go wide decks, those really just low to the ground aggressive decks. It can be nice to just gain a little bit of life. But I just think you have a number of cards that do this better, that either do this on a body so you can also block some damage, or they gain you more life like a Pulsa Marasa does. Or they, also like Pulsa Marasa that grabs something out of your graveyard. All this does is gain you life, and it could potentially be played a couple of extra times. If you build the deck correctly, and also really limit yourself in the deck building, because you have to play more arcane spells, which only show up in Kamigawa. They never made more, which is understandable, but also a little sad. I'm going to give this thing in terms of the arcane spells, this is probably one of the more playable ones, which is why I'm going to end up giving it a 2.3. But it's not good. Helionaut. Oh, I like Helionaut. It's 2 and a white for a 1/2 human soldier with flying, and you can pay 1, tap it, and add 1 mana of any color. So it's a mana filter here. But it's also comes on a 1/2 flying body. This is a bad card. Just going to say straight up, bad card, but I like the art. I've always liked Helionaut. I think it's just a cool idea for a card name, for the art style, but it's not good. 3 mana for this effect is pretty bad. We have cheaper, better ways of mana filtering, even in white, in the Pauper format. And I just, a 1/2 flying body for 3 mana is just completely outclassed. So don't worry about playing this one, but maybe pick up a copy because it's a dime and it's a cool looking card. Maybe a cube card. Probably not, but maybe. Maybe if you're playing like a real old school cube and just want to have some weird bad creatures to throw in there as well. I'm going to go with I'm really tempted to say 1.2 just to match the power and toughness, but it's better than that. We'll end up giving it a whole 1.6. Aren't we generous? Nah, we can probably even do better than that. Let's go like 1.8. That jumped up quite a bit. It's still bad though. 1.8. Is this our last card, or this is our first bonus card? It's hard to tell. Rimrock Knight, 1 and a red for a 3/1 Dwarf Knight that cannot block. But it also has this adventure strapped to it as well. It has Boulder Rush. For a single red mana, you have an instant adventure that says target creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn. So with the adventure, you then exile that card and you can cast the creature side on or later. Not even on a later turn. You can cast it that turn if you want to, but you just have to cast it after you've already cast the adventure side. I kind of like this. I like these cheap adventure cards, something that you can play early and then also play the creature later and get that extra value to it. It is a form of card advantage in that way. You're getting 2 spells for the price of 1 here, or for the price of 1 card. And that's cool. My problem with this one is that this instant is something, it's a combat trick at that point. So you kind of want to hold it in your hand for the perfect moment. But then you have this creature that you definitely want to play early because it's 2 mana and it's 3/1. So it really only has value in the early part of the game where your opponent might not have put down blockers yet. And so you can get in with some of that damage. So they're kind of at odds. It's kind of a non-bow in that way, where I've lost some value by playing this early so I can get to the creature on turn 2. Well, I guess you wouldn't play this on turn 1 unless you had like an Ornithopter or something, and even then it doesn't have haste. So, scrap that. But you're just kind of fighting on what part to play at what time. It doesn't feel natural. It doesn't feel, it feels like you're going against yourself whenever you play one side or the other, that maybe you should have played the other side instead. So I don't like this one as much as I like some other adventure cards, but there is still value here. It is, if you have 4 copies in your deck, which you really shouldn't, but if you had 4 copies in your deck, you can play some as just the creature side, and then play the instant, and then have those extra creatures at another point in the game. Maybe, but neither of these effects are that good on their own, and they combine to make a pretty mediocre card still. We're gonna go ahead and give this thing I'm going to give it a 1.7. Yeah, I think a 1.7 is where this goes, just for the mediocrity. And you know what? I don't know if this is our bonus card or if we're doing another bonus card. I've lost the order a long time ago, but we will do one more card here and see what we get. It's Guardian of the Pilgrim, or Guardian of Pilgrims, not of the Pilgrims, just Pilgrims. 1 and a white for a 2/2 Spirit Cleric. When this creature enters, target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. That right there is a very normal and very boring Magic card, which I will give, it's better than a Grizzly Bear. I wanted to give it a 1 something, but it is better than a Grizzly Bear, so I guess it deserves a 2 point. All right, we'll do this one. This gets the 2.2. It gets its power and toughness. That's fun. Yeah, not a very good card though. I wouldn't play this one either. It's fun though. I like the art. That's fun. But that's all I really got for you. Unfortunately, we got to end on a bit of a bummer today, but we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.